Hey, everybody. Welcome to this brand new episode of the Heart is a Muscle podcast here with Joseph and Jordin James,
Hi.
also known as Jordin Jordin.
Yeah, you'll find out why in this episode.
And we're going to talk about something fundamental but crucial.
Why are relationships even important?
Mm-hmm.
And we handle that topic all kind of different ways. So buckle up. You will be tested on it.
Yeah. Get a piece of paper and a pen because there's some really good things you should write down. All right. Are you ready?
Let's get into it.
I'm ready. Let's go. All right. You know what that means.
It's time for another episode of the Heart is a Muscle podcast.
The Heart is a Muscle podcast.
Yay. And we've got a really good one. You came up with an awesome topic for today.
Absolutely.
It's like foundational.
Yeah, this one may seem a little bit basic, but it's basic because it's a foundation.
Yeah, and sometimes you got to start with the basics. Like,
yeah,
it's the fundamentals that really get you going.
Yeah, because this is since we're starting this new season, this new phase, you're getting to see our beautiful faces this whole time. We're going to talk about why it's even important to have relationships in your life.
Mhm.
Why should you care? Why should you have people in your life besides just yourself?
Yeah. That is especially for those of us who have been hurt significantly in relationships, or especially for those of us like me, I moved around a lot, so I never really had lasting friendships even. I felt pretty lonely like in my family growing up, so it was like it just seemed like relationships were a headache. Like low-key, that is a belief that my parts held. It was like relationships are just like, I don't know, not that important. They're not that worthwhile.
Well, the funny thing is with that is that regardless if you think relationships are important or not, you have a relationship with yourself that you have to pay attention to. That's the relationship you cannot deny. Yeah, and whether you believe that or not, sorry, we're all part of that. Oh, you look like you're drinking the mountains there.
Oh, really? It's fresh spring water straight from the mountain.
So now we've got that out of the way. We're going to dive into that. And if you are just listening to this, we are here in this beautiful Alpine Valley
in the fatherland.
We're in the fatherland right now. Yodel.
Oh man, I wish I had a cowbell to ring.
We'll have to,
jingle jangle.
So this is the last piece of equipment we need to get is a soundboard.
Yeah, we really do.
Because that would really make this podcast
we need a soundboard.
Go from a 9 to a 20.
Sign up for a Patreon so you can fund our soundboard. I promise that will add so much more value to this podcast.
We're gonna start a soundboard fundraiser right now.
Yeah.
The first 5 people to put in their $5. How many? I don't know. I think a decent soundboard somewhere around $100 or so.
Yeah. Okay. So we need
20 people.
20 people. Oh.
20 people.
Blame me for thinking big.
To join our Patreon, and then we're gonna have a soundboard, and then this is just gonna be nothing but cowbell, donkey sounds,
and of course farts.
And of course farts. So if that's what the value you really want out of this podcast is, go to patreon.com/theheartisamuscle right now and smash that button. I love it when people say that. You gotta smash that button.
Yeah.
That's what I say to you when we go to the bed.
Yeah.
I'm gonna smash that button.
Smash that button. Nothing turns me on, then I got all button smashing.
So relationships. That's what this whole podcast is about. And the reason we started this podcast was because relationships are hard. Yeah. You can't slice it any way than that.
They bring up all your shit. That's why they're hard.
This is something funny that you brought up. I think you mentioned this when we first started dating. And that I'm probably going to butcher this, but it's something about how relationships are a one-way mirror into your shit.
Yeah. Yeah, like the function of relationships is actually to bring out your shadow, to bring out the parts of you that you're not consciously aware of, so you can integrate them, so you can heal them, so you can become more whole.
Mm-hmm.
And that's people like enter into relationships and they like start bringing out their shadow, and people are like, oh, there's a problem with this person, like there's a problem with this relationship,
like their shadow, it's bringing shit up in my shadow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But really it's like, yo, that's the function of it. That is a function of it. And if it's a healthy relationship, the other function is for your partner to love you through that.
Yeah.
To give your shadow the love that they never got back then.
Yeah, to help you both bear the burden of your shadow is
that's so right.
That's one of the core things about relationships that is so fulfilling, is that as human beings, we are drawn to each other for whatever reason. And so that's part of the reason that we're drawn to each other, is because we have to exist in this somewhat chaotic world that is somewhat unforgiving. And doing that together is always better than doing that alone.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. Actually, no, I don't want to say always, because
no, it's always.
Like,
argue the point.
Well, because like sometimes relationships with some people legitimately just like weighs you down. Like some people, my mom always says this, and I don't know where she gets it from.
Mama used to say.
My mama said, people, our wings are weights.
Yeah, this is very true.
And so some people are just gonna be fucking weights, and like those, like that's where boundaries come into play. Yes. But like finding, like we are not meant to just live by ourselves. Like we are meant to live in community that gives us wings. Oh, because like when you're around people that are your wings, and your wings to them, like, oh, life just hits another level.
That's where in ancient times the phrase wingman, or I guess wing woman, came from.
Yep.
That's true.
Yeah,
okay, that's not false news.
That's straight from like the news.
Yeah.
There's a historical text about that somewhere.
I'm sure there's probably some Sanskrit tablet somewhere that is talking about someone and their wingman. You know, it's just science.
That goes back to caveman days. I'm pretty sure there's some paintings about that.
Oh, look, good wingman. Bring prosperity.
Bring great snoo.
Great snoo brought from Ogluk as wingman. But yeah, in all seriousness, I'm going to revoke that what was I saying? That relationships are everything?
Always.
Yeah. Because there can be periods of time where you have to be fortified within yourself, but that doesn't mean you are without relationships, because you always have the relationship with yourself. And even when you are alone or not like intimately connected to someone, you always have your network of people that you have to keep relationships with. And that can be a very, very powerful thing when you don't have an intimate relationship with someone. You have community relationships with people.
Yes.
That's where friendship is such an important thing. That's where mentorship is such an important thing. That's where doing acts of service is such an important thing. Like those are relationships, even if they're brief or if they're not extremely intimate.
Yeah.
But they are all emotional exchanges.
Totally. And I also think like, what do I want to say? Like being a part of a community with shared values or a shared purpose, man, that's so nice.
It is so nice.
It is so nice.
And
also having a badass intimate relationship is so nice too. I didn't know it could be like this, baby.
Well, now you do. I didn't know either. When I was a confirmed bachelor for life, I was like, nah, relationships are bullshit, especially intimate ones, and especially intimate ones with women.
Yeah.
And you have undone...
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, you have.
I mean, but about men. Yeah. Well, and women.
Yeah. You have undone all of those.
Just by being me.
Just by being you.
I haven't even tried.
So that's another tricky thing about relationships, is sometimes it takes some trying to find the ones that really hit the mark.
Yeah. Because
as you mentioned, and this is a very important thing, some relationships can be weights.
Yeah. Okay. So there's like this like download of clarity that's coming through for me that I would love to share.
Download coming in.
Just to like kind of make it a little bit more clear. It seems like a part of everybody's hero's journey in their lifetime, into them coming into more of their power, more of their wholeness, you know, healing, whatever you want to call it, is to, it seems like you've got to first build the skill. Well, I don't know if it's first or not, but building the skill of saying no and setting boundaries with relationships that are weights to you. So first of all, identifying which relationships are serving you and which ones are not. Which relationships actually make you feel lonelier when you're in them. So setting boundaries and saying no to participating in those kinds of relationships. But I feel like that's where a lot of people stop, because they're like, they've only ever known like unhealthy relationship, or relationships that just don't feel good to them, or relationships that make them feel lonelier. And so they think like, okay, yeah, I've set those boundaries. Now I guess I just got to be by myself. But like the goal of healing, of like coming into your full power, is not to just like be able to set boundaries with everybody and like be your own little hermit self. Like that is only half of the journey. The other half of the journey is being able to enter back into relationships with people that are wings to you. And even though people are going to be wings to you, like you've always been a wing for me.
Absolutely. I'm such
always
a good wingman.
You are such a good wingman. Yeah, but I didn't always view it that way. Different parts of me had different stories about that, because it's like I brought in all my relationship like trauma and baggage into our relationship. And no, you were a perfect little cherub.
That's why I brought wings to that. I brought my little cherub wings.
Well, and I think we were wings together because we consciously continued to choose love and kindness and honesty. But that wasn't to say that like, oh, okay, yeah, you just got to find the people that give you wings, and you're never going to have to like confront your relational shadow, your relational trauma again. It's like that's the second half of the journey, is finding safe relationships where you can start to work out and integrate and heal your relationship wounds.
All right. Well, we've done this has been a huge shotgun blast about relationships so far.
Call me the fire hose.
In this corner, we've got Jordin, the fire hose Jordin, in the red shorts.
Fire hose Jordin, hell yeah.
Jordin, yeah, your name is Jordin Jordin.
Yeah. I should have changed my last name too. My first name.
Yeah.
Jordin Jordinson.
Jordin Jordinson. So let's break it down, because there's two basic inner world and outer world relationships we always have to be balancing, because that is the drama of life. You know, if life is a stage and we're all just players, we also have stages and players within ourselves, and we need to pay attention to that fractal, because a lot of the times why relationships in the outer world, i.e. intimate relationships, friendships, the relationship with your parents, coworkers, all of these interactions that we have with the human race, the reason why those often bring up so much of our shadow is because our inner world is usually full of shadows. Or it's somewhere when we kind of turn around and look inward, we're just like, oh man, what a mess.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, I don't know what any of this is. Like
it's full of like projection, judgment.
And so often, I don't know about you, but when I try to start a healing journey with someone through coaching, it's always, okay, forget what's going on in the outside world. We can always put that on pause for a moment. Let's take a minute and start to look inward, because that has to be the first one, because that is the relationship you cannot cast aside. As much as you want to try, because you can try to cast that aside, it's always going to be there. And there's always going to be parts of you that are knocking on the door being like, hello, I have something to say. And that's why I think we always advocate for parts work, because in our experience, it's kind of the easiest way to start that conversation. And it's a powerful way to have that conversation and to separate the observing you from your inner world that's speaking to you. Yes,
that's so right.
So that way you can make the separation of I am a bad person versus I have this part of me that does bad things.
Or that thinks that they're a bad person.
Or that thinks they're a bad person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it really starts to literally build a relationship between a self and kind of other part. And that's where you can build that relationship, because if you are looking into your inner world and you're seeing it from a first person perspective, just like swapping between all these parts, you just get lost. You're just in a maze.
And you're seeing the outer world through the knot holes of your pain, of your wounds. You're not actually seeing the outer world as it is.
And so being able to recognize these parts, you can literally sit down with them in the inner world and have a conversation. And when other ones kind of come into the conversation and try and smack the mic away or take the mic, you can say, up, please give the mic back. You know, thank you for showing up, but I'm talking with this part right here. If you'll kindly give the mic back, and they will do that. It often takes like help to build those skills, and that's what great folks like me and Jordin over here are doing.
Jordin the fire hose,
Jordin the fire hose. But yeah, that's where relationship starts, because the outer world relationship, it's like playing 3D chess, because you are not only working with your inner relationship, you're also working with that person's inner relationship, plus the commingling of this outer relationship, plus the commingling of everybody else in the world and their outer relationships. That's why work, like when you're actually working as a team, and that's why work can turn into such a shit show all the time, because you're all trying to achieve something and dealing with each other's baggage and dealing with each other's like strengths and weaknesses, and trying to like avoid HR. So, and this is why there's been such a movement to incorporate more coaching and therapy into the workplace, because people finally realize, yeah, we're not robots as much as we want to objectify each other as robots doing a task.
Yeah. And as much, okay, this is like the fucking hill I am going to die on, and that I want to spend the rest of my life like talking about, is we often treat ourselves like we are performance robots. Like when we even when people are like doing like parts work or are on their healing journey, they're looking inward at all the things that need to be like fixed. They're looking inward at all the parts that need to be healed, or all the things that are wrong, all the ways that the parts that are getting in the way of them like performing. And it's a whole different story when you start checking in with yourself, like, hey, Jordin, like, how are you? Like, how actually are you, doing? Hey, parts, like, how's it been for you lately? Like, so many of us are not in relationship with ourselves. We are treating ourselves in the way that capitalism has taught us to treat ourselves. And like, I think that is the biggest part of the feminine wisdom that I want to bring back, is remembering how to be in relationship. Yeah. Instead of just like psychoanalyzing ourselves from a distance, or trying to get rid of the parts of us that are inconvenient.
Yes.
Like, oh, but so it's like, and what I noticed is, especially this is what I noticed for me, is that when like I have such a habit of just psychoanalyzing myself, like even still I have parts that like that's how we've survived, and that like the relationship that I have with myself is how I treat other people. Is
I think that's very common.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why we project, that's why we judge, that's why we're critical in relationships, is because that's the script that's running on the inside too.
Yes.
There's so much talk about, oh, you got to like change your programming. And yeah, that's not a bad analogy, because there is a certain amount of like conditioning that goes into creating how your parts work together. So you could call that a program. Sure, whatever. But that program also is how you express yourself that in the outer world too. So if you are full of self-judgment, self-criticism, and self-neglect, then what are you going to do? You're going to judge, you're going to criticize, you're going to neglect, you're going to objectify, all these things. And it's this weird thing, because when you do those things, you don't fulfill the need within yourself that's not being met, but you are kind of masking it over.
Yeah.
You're fulfilling that part's desire to help you avoid the pain by projecting these outer world things, but it doesn't fix it. It's a very forceful thing that just has to keep, you got to keep refueling it. You got to keep pouring more gas on it.
Totally. Yeah. And so I think it's like when we treat ourselves, when we only value the parts of us that are convenient, like I do the same to you. I only love you as long as you're convenient for me. And as soon as you stop being convenient, like then I withdraw love. Like, man, that like there's a whole other way to do relationships.
And what happens when you do that? I become way less convenient.
Yeah.
It's a very
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, this is the other thing that we often tend to do, is when we don't work with our inner world and try to come to terms with these things that we project out in the outer world, it perpetuates them. And then what does that do? That makes our inner world even more inflamed and even more upset. So we do it even more. It's how many people do we know that have like just burnt bridges or lived in perpetual unhappiness or just never been able to get out of that funk? I mean, I know I've been there. I've been in there hard and still working to get out of there. But
yeah. Okay. So I would really like to kind of give a concise little overview about why I think relationships are so important.
Excellent. That's what this podcast is needing.
Okay.
Go.
So, and it starts in our inner world, of course, because I'm me. So our parts that like hold the raw pain of our wounds, usually those parts of us are buried like deep in our unconscious. That's why the internal family systems modality calls them exiles, because our other parts have exiled those parts that hold our raw wounds from our from our conscious awareness. Because if we were consciously aware of all the pain that they held, we would not be able to function. And so, but when we are able to go to those parts, what are the type of wounds that they're holding? They're holding the wounds of rejection, the wounds of betrayal, of abandonment, of shame. Like all of those wounds were created in relationship. Our biggest wounds are relational wounds. And like almost everything we do is about helping us soothe those wounds. And so what gets harmed in relationship gets healed in relationship. So many of us like that's why sometimes you might be able to relate to this of when you're by yourself, like when you're on your own, especially not in an intimate relationship, it's just so much easier to stay regulated. It's so much easier to like know who you are. It's so much easier to just like navigate the world. That's because those core wounds of yours aren't being triggered at all, because you're just not even in the relational realm. And then as soon as you enter into relationship, all of a sudden things get really confusing. You get really confused about who you are, all of that stuff. It's because now those wounds are starting to play out under the surface.
It's the don't feel, conceal mentality.
Yeah. So, but that's why healthy relationships are so important, because those wounds are only ever going to be addressed and like actually released and actually healed, like in relationship. When we can go to those parts that have felt betrayal and give them love and safety, when we can go to those parts that are that have been abandoned and let them know, like, I choose you for the rest of my fucking life. Like, I choose you. And then to have your partner, listen to the story of those parts of you that have been abandoned and really witness their pain for them and be like, yeah, I see you, like, also a wound that our parts carry is of being unheard. Being unheard and unseen, feeling invisible and lonely. Like, fuck it, that's a relational wound. And so we're not going to actually be able to address those wounds by being a hermit all on our own. Like, the only way to address those wounds is to enter back into relationship. enter back into relationship with ourselves. So I think it starts inside of like starting to treat yourself as a human being, instead of trying to like get rid of those feelings of abandonment or feelings of shame, to actually start loving them. And then like once you can get in relationship with yourself, then setting the standards and letting your partner in of like, this is how I need to be loved. Does this meet your needs to love me in this way, to treat me in this way? And if they are the right person for you or a good person for you, it will meet their needs. It will deeply meet their needs.
And so this is why making that inner relationship, starting there, is important, because oftentimes we'll find ourselves in an outer world relationship with someone and it doesn't fulfill our needs and it's just kind of getting by. And then when one of the people in the relationship will start to do this inner work, and you'll realize, okay, now I need you to do also this inner work for yourself so we can start to meet. And then it gets tough, because that's something that you have to surrender to do. You have to want to do that.
Yeah.
And this can be the tough thing when you're already in a relationship and one person starts to heal and the other one's kind of like, I don't buy into all this mumbo jumper, or they don't see the value in it.
Yeah. Can we talk about that? Because that's a huge pain point.
I think we can talk about that. This is our podcast.
This is our podcast. We can do whatever the fuck we want. Yeah. Like, that's so because like this is where you blew my mind over and over again, because I had never actually experienced this in relationship, where it was like when I was first starting to really get into parts work and stuff, and you weren't really. And then we had an incident, a Halloween incident. And like what my parts really needed was, I think I made the explicit request of like, I need you to learn about parts. I need us to be able to speak the same language on this. And then you did. Like then, like it's just like every time I've prompted evolution, like you've evolved with me, and vice versa. Yeah. And it's like, oh shit, like it could be like that. All that I had experienced is like me on my healing journey all by myself, and my partner like kind of doing their own thing. And I mean, I just felt like so unworthy, or I just didn't even know it was possible to have a partner that was on this journey with me. Yeah. And so like, what do people do when they're on this journey, but their partner is just like not interested in that?
Well, you have to be explicit about it. Like that was, because you get to that point where when someone is on a healing journey and the other person is kind of lagging behind or not that in tune with it, and you do eventually get to that point where it's like, look, I'm not who I used to be, and I'm becoming this new person, and like that new person is not going to tolerate who you are unless you start to change as well. And
yeah,
like
normalize becoming a new person.
Yeah, that's not always a kind or a friendly thing, but it is an explicit thing that you have to call out, because when you start to do the relationship healing with your inner world, you do change. And like that's the only way that we do change. You know, they say that people never really change. That's not true.
I think it's bullshit.
I think we can always change.
I
it's
personally
a choice of, do you want to change, and are you willing to like do the work to change?
Yeah.
And
like, does it meet your needs to like change in the way that you know, to like evolve with me in the way that I'm going? Or do you actually like, would you rather not? And like, I'm not going to make you wrong for that, but like I also know what I need.
Yeah. And so that is, when you make that explicit, then you give that person a choice that they can either start their own healing journey, because it's not a like, if you come at it like, oh, I'm healing in this way and it's fucking awesome, and so you better do it too. Like that's the difference between like a request and a demand. Because a healing journey is specific to everybody, and like going through changes and growing, it's not going to be the same. We were just talking about this morning, how whatever work you're doing on your inner world, like you can't expect me to do the exact same work, because I'm not you. And like I never will be able to do it the same. But when you do make that explicit request that, look, I'm healing, I'm changing, these are the things that are now important to me, and like you in your current state, you're not meeting those, so will you do, like, you made an explicit thing about parts work because you're like, this works and it's really working well for me, so I think you should try it. Then I was given that choice, and like, I could empower myself to make a choice that was in line with that, or I can empower myself to make a choice that is not in line with that. Either way is making a choice that kind of moves the plot along. And sometimes that is where it's like two people, even if you do both start to go on a healing journey, and those healing journey goes in different direction, like, that's a good thing. Because you are both evolving yourself, you're getting into that inner relationship, and sometimes that means that outer relationship just wasn't correct in the first place.
And I feel like this is where, like, our culture's systems of marriage, and especially like religious systems of marriage, like, I don't know, really fuck up relationships.
Well, I will give an anti to that, because there's a thing that I think a lot of people who are getting married or going to get married or engaged don't do, is that they don't get some kind of counseling before they get married to say, like, hey guys, like, you are committing to each other for the rest of your life. Is this what you really want, or are you just like doing the thing? And, you know, take it for what it is. A lot of it is, are you in alignment with like God's will or something like that?
A lot of premarital counseling is just making sure you don't have sex.
I mean, there's always that. But like, the thought of, before you literally commit to yourself, before you sign a contract with each other to be a business entity, which marriage is, you should like do this work first. But
like, I mean, I did counseling before I got married.
You know, like, I'm not going to say it's going to guarantee it's going to work, but you have a much better chance.
I guess I just think, like, over the course of your life, like, you evolve into a different person, and like, relationships who, so this is just my opinion. Like, it just seems like so unrealistic to like be expected to stop your evolution, or to stop like getting into more and more alignment with who you are, to stay in a relationship that's too small for you.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I feel like relationships that like stay together are relationships that, like, partners who continue to evolve together. And I think, like, for you and I, you know, it's not like, so far it's just worked out really fucking well for us to continue to evolve together. Like, it's just been really fun for us to continue to evolve together. And like, to me, that's what I'm most loyal to in my relationships. And that doesn't mean like I'm out as soon as, you know, we disagree or whatever. Like, we've worked through a lot of that kind of stuff. But like, if you're in a relationship where you married somebody like a long time ago, and like, you're really evolving and they're not really willing to evolve with you, like, I just think people need to stop making themselves wrong for that.
I agree. I mean, why are divorce rates so high? Is it because like nobody believes in marriage anymore and all this kind of stuff? Sure, there's probably some of that, but there's also just a lot of people who thought that they were really compatible with each other, and then as they evolve through life, their priorities change, or they weren't actually really committed or whatever, and then you're stuck in this bad business deal.
And that doesn't even necessarily have to mean that the relationship has failed or something. Like, I don't think that like success means that you stay together for the rest of your life. There are lots of other measures of success of the relationship. Like, a relationship could just have run its course. Like, it could have like provided you with exactly what each other needed for that amount of time, and now it's like run its course. Like, that can be something that happens. Like, it's okay to like be heartbroken about that. It's okay to have feelings about that, but like, that's not a bad thing. I would say that's a natural thing. If you are a human with a pulse who is trying so hard to live this life consciously, like, you're just going to keep evolving. You're going to change over the course of your life.
Yeah.
And if like who you are becoming is not in alignment with like, you know, if you have outgrown the container of your relationship and your relationship isn't continuing to grow with you, like, I think that's okay to talk to your partner about.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Relationships, life is always changing. Relationships are always changing. Your relationship with your inner world is always changing, always evolving. And so, yeah, you should put in the work to make sure that that relationship is working and like meeting your needs. And if you do that, more likely than not, like it will continue to be good.
Yeah.
If you do the work and you continue to grow together, even if it's not perfectly in alignment, but it's like
take the perfectionism out.
Somewhat close, you know, because even some relationships where you kind of grow in different areas and different stuff, but you still have a common commitment. I mean, whether it's goals or children or pets or, you know, whatever it is, property, all that kind of stuff, but you can still evolve with each other. You can still have a meaningful relationship. And that's about as good as we can do.
Yeah. Oh shit. There was one other thing I was going to say.
And we're talking about the importance of all of this because the importance of all of this is in relationship. If we can foster good ones and keep them going, then you have a more high likelihood of having a satisfying life.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I think this is what I just want to be clear is like, okay. This is what I was going to say.
Right.
It's Esther Perel's quote of, most people are in 2 to 3 marriages in their life, and some of them are with the same person.
Yeah.
It's like, so just because you entered into this contract with the same person, you've evolved, that doesn't necessarily mean you gotta like break up or anything.
Yeah, I mean, people renew their vows.
Yeah.
It's kind of a like, well, this is a new chapter in this marriage or this like thing that this relationship we're having, and fucking awesome. I mean, why not?
Right, totally. And so, but I think like instead of you know, trying to just shame yourself or fit yourself back into the old box, like to have that conversation with your partner of like, are we going to reinvent this for, you know, are we going to like reinvent a relationship here, or has this relationship run its course? And like take your time exploring that. That doesn't have to be, you know, an ultimatum thing, but like if you are willing to go first and share what's not working for you anymore, like that is only ever an invitation for expansion for both people. Yeah, you're going to feel some feelings about it, but like a reality exists where you share that with your partner and they choose to evolve. Yeah. Like that's the thing about you and I is like our container for our relationship just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and deeper and deeper and deeper as we continue evolving together.
And the thing that helps to bolster that too is if, as you start to do this interrelationship work as individuals, and you keep this outer world relationship in communication and in a working, evolving thing, when someone does take a dog leg to the right, a lot of the time there's going to be a significant interest to be like, you know what, that looks like a dog leg I want to take too. And it's easier to have that conversation of, is this something worth staying in or not, when you've already done the work to talk with your inner world. Yes. Because, you know, what we've seen with some couples is where there's been a lot of effort to say, look, I'm evolving in this way and I'm like inviting you to come with me. And the other person just does not have they don't have the skills or the training or the willingness, the capacity to look inward yet. And it doesn't mean that they can't. And it doesn't mean that they won't in the future. But at this point in time, like the effort has been made to really try to reconnect and to get in alignment. And it's just not happening. Yep. And that's an unfortunate thing, but it is a necessary thing to then make a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like where people like kind of they go a little too fast with this of they avoid the vulnerable part of actually showing up as more of their authentic self in relationships, of like communicating their needs more directly, of being explicit about the things that aren't working for them. And they just decide in their head, like, I've outgrown this, like I'm out of here. Yeah. Like, no. Like, first of all, before you like decide that, it is your work to show up as like to bring more of your honesty to the relationship
Mm-hmm.
and give your partner a chance, like a good long chance to evolve with you, because you might actually be missing out on something really, really special.
Mm-hmm.
And also like, it is a part of your work, a part of your own hero's journey to show up more authentically and honestly in this
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And when you show up more authentically and honestly, and you give it some time, like the dust will settle and it will become really, really clear whether this relationship has run its course or it's starting to evolve into something that will meet both of your needs more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is the power of being vulnerable, is it always is an invitation for the other person to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
When you show
That's
up
right.
more vulnerably, you know, how many times have we been in an argument or something like that, and then eventually one person just cracks in vulnerability, and it's just like,
Yeah.
I'm
And it's
so
usually you.
yeah. Well, me?
You're
Oh,
just
really?
good at it. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of one of those time honored things of someone just being like, you know what, fuck all this. Like,
Yeah.
I just feel so sad and so lost and so everything right now. And you
Mhm.
can feel the tension cut, and
Mhm.
like that reestablishing that vulnerability is a reestablishment of like, look, we're both humans here and we're trying
Yeah.
really hard, but
Yeah.
like coming at each other through force is not going to do it. We need to do this through
Mhm.
power, and power is felt through vulnerability and honesty.
Oh, that's so good. I hope people are writing that down.
Yeah, we forgot to mention there will be a quiz at the end, so you
Yeah.
should be taking notes, folks. And the quiz is called Life.
This is not a drill.
Yeah.
People.
Break the glass. This is not a drill. So yeah, that's a lot of rambling about making relationships happen in work, but why is it so important that we do
Yeah,
this,
let's get
Jordan?
back
Let's
to
get back to
to
the
the
hot topic
actual
here.
topic.
Because this is all well and fine, but if you don't know why you should give a shit, then why give a shit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did explain a little bit about why you should give a shit, is because like your core fucking wounds come from relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't going to be addressed until you learn the skills to have a fulfilling, satisfying relationship
Mm-hmm.
where you can be like, to me, a satisfying relationship is where you can just be 100% yourself and where you can feel seen and heard, and you can have fucking fun with somebody else who is being 100% themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a relationship that is robust, is flexible,
And also anti-fragile.
and anti-fragile. It's all these things where it can be flexible, but it can also be very sturdy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like a palm tree. A good relationship's like a palm
no
tree.
wonder why you love palm trees so
Of
much.
course. Because you look at a palm tree and you're like, that shit's gonna fall over. Absolutely. There's no way that's gonna stand up. And then a windstorm comes through and that palm tree is like, whoa, and it bends over and it wiggles and it shakes, and it may lose a couple palm fronds. It may sway around a little bit, but then when the sun comes out, that palm tree's like, that was great. I'm glad that I weathered the storm because I'm flexible, but I'm also tough. I also have good roots, and I have evolved myself to weather the storm, because they do come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then when the sun shines, that palm tree is like, give it to me, baby. Give me that sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yes, in essence, what we're saying is make your relationship like a palm tree. And if you don't know what a palm tree is, they're like relationships. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't know what a palm tree is, check it out. Go Google a palm tree and why they're hey, you know what? I want to be inclusive to everybody, because I know our audience is growing.
Yeah.
And
true.
there may be some people who are like, palm tree, what the fuck? I live
Mhm.
in like a pinewood forest.
I
You
live in
fool.
Chicago.
Yeah. But also pine trees are very much like this as well, you know. Anyways, you want to be sturdy, you want to be flexible, you want to always be growing and evolving, and you want to be vulnerable. I mean, what's more vulnerable than a palm tree?
Palm trees are so vulnerable.
Yeah.
They're so exposed.
I go and talk to the palm trees around here every once in a while, and you know what? They always listen.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just as a little side note, get like trees are great listeners.
They really, they really are.
And like, if you like, even in your imagination, if you go up to a tree, put your hand on the bark and give it your bad energy, give it like any negative energy that you're carrying, they love that shit. They absolutely love that shit because they alchemize it and decompose it back into life. Like Earth is big enough and robust enough to hold that negative energy. We are not meant to hold that negative energy. Just a little side note.
There's a little bit of side note. Let's have another great example of where relationships have been really powerful. Okay. Why do people like dogs? Okay. If you have a dog that loves you, that you love, people can't get enough of that stuff because a dog doesn't judge you. It always accepts you for who you are, as long as you're not mean to it, which makes sense. A dog will always listen. A dog will share those emotions with you, and a dog will always be vulnerable with you.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the perfect relationship.
Yeah. And to me, like,
dogs are a little needy.
Yeah.
They're a little codependent too. So.
Yeah, they are. They're like just themselves. They're not like trying to pretend to be anything other than themselves.
And so that's why people like dogs. And I think I can understand that's why people don't like cats so much, because cats are a little self-centered.
Yeah, but cats in another way, like they are just themselves too.
Cats are very magical. So yeah, they always are themselves too. That's why everyone loves cat videos, is because cats are super dorks and they don't care.
That's true.
They just brush it off. But relationships, super important, because in my opinion, and I think this opinion can be shared, a life without relationships is not really a human experience, because we are communal creatures. We always have been. That's how we've been able to be such a dominant species, is that we somehow figured out to do relationship really well, better than just, oh, we're in a pack and we act together, which is a very, very useful thing in nature too. I mean, that's how a lot of animals have really thrived. But we do it in a way where we really connect on a deeper level. And I don't know if this is a true study, but I've heard that like when people are put into isolation, they literally start to die on the inside out.
Yeah, well, here's the thing is, I think humans, we are a relationship. Like I am not just like one solitary Jordin James. I have one body that's a container for who I am. But like inside of that, Jordin James is the relationship my parts have with themselves. Like at the end of the day, I am just the relationship that my parts have created inside. I'm the relationship that my parts have with my essence. Yeah. And like that's why as our inner relationship with ourself evolves, our outer relationships, it's a normal and healthy for our outer relationships to have to evolve with that as a reflection of how our inner relationship evolves. But like so often we've got parts of us that don't want our inner relationship to evolve if it will threaten our outer relationships. Right. And that's where like your courage has to come into play, and to trust that like as you are loyal to the evolution of your inner relationship, either your outer relationships will evolve with you, because that's a thing that actually happens, people. Like you don't have to leave people behind to evolve. You really don't. Like I didn't know that before I met Josef. But like to be willing to be devoted to the evolution you have with yourself, and to start with that being like the main thing, and then having your outer relationships be a reflection of that, of your inner relationship with yourself.
That's why they're important, don't you think?
I do think, yeah.
Like one last thing to take this even a layer deeper, which I think you're alluding to as well when you speak of your essence, that like divine spark or whatever that lives within us. Most of the time people associate that with God or religion or the Buddha or Allah or whoever, whatever divine deity, that source energy, whatever that is that suits your fancy. Like that is kind of the quintessential step one relationship of you as this mortal being and the universe, this like existence that we're in, that we've pondered over for our entire evolutionary thing. Why are we here? Who's who's manning this whole thing or taking control of all of this stuff. That's like the fundamental relationship that we have, and we grow our relationship within ourselves and with our people from that first spark.
Yeah.
And that is something we can't avoid. And that's where spirituality is such a powerful thing, because that is the conversation with that ultimate first relationship. Who am I and where do I fit in this whole picture?
Yeah.
And is it God, or, you know, what's the name for the earth goddess? Gaia?
Pachamama?
Quetzalcoatl, whoever it is. How am I in relationship with that? Because that's also a very fundamental thing of, how am I in relationship with the unknown?
Yeah.
Which is,
yeah. Write that down, people.
Yeah. Because that, honestly, that is what God is in so many words. It is the mystery. It is the unknown that, like, we try and personify. And like follow its will, whatever that is. But we don't really know what it is. We think we do. And honestly, it's probably just us being like, these are some things we do because we know if we don't do them, we won't survive.
Yeah. Okay, I have one other thing that I want to say about relationships. All right. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Well, take some time to get in conversation with that first relationship too, because that's kind of where everything else grows from. Because even with parts work, when you are able to be in self, you know, you can make that an analogous thing to, you are in alignment with like God almost, that's speaking its truth through you. So pay attention to that, because that's kind of where it all starts from,
That's exactly right.
All right. I have said what I meant to say.
I love it. Yeah. So here is also a big, huge shift that has shifted for me. And that I think it's just a part of everybody's, hero's journey, individuation journey, self-actualization journey. So we have a whole bunch of parts inside of us. We're like a whole ecosystem inside of us that is also like fractaled out into, if we think of the whole globe, everybody on this planet, we are a part of that collective whole. And so often, like at least for me, I've spent most of my life, seeing how other people can serve me. Or seeing how like what I like and what I don't like about the collective, and like judging other people, instead of like answering the most fundamental question of like, what part do I want to play in the collective whole? Like inside of us, we've got all kind of parts that need to play all kind of different roles, and each part, their role that they play is important. So instead of trying to think about the collective of like how it can serve you, like start thinking about like, what is the role that I actually want to play in the grander collective? Like if
I was gonna say, don't tell anybody, but that's what destiny is. So if you're like, oh, what's my destiny, man, ask that relationship, or ask yourself, what relationship do I want to have with this global, universal, like relationship?
That's right. And like I think I really like what you said about destiny, because there is an element of this where you get to choose. It's not about you trying to find out like what somebody else has destined you to be. No, you find your destiny when you choose how you want to show up, like who you want to be in the collective, the part that you want to play with your one wild and precious life. What is the part that you want to play while you're here? And honoring that, like the part that you want to play doesn't, and the one that like makes you feel alive to play, does not have to be the one that society told you to play. It doesn't have to. It's probably not the one that your parents wanted you to play. It's probably not the one. It might not even be the one your partner wants you to play.
Absolutely.
Like your destiny is to be decided by you. And so like that is the power move when we're talking about like finding healthy relationships and having a healthy relationship with yourself. That is where you can really become your inner leader and get focused on like, what is the role that I want to play here? And then what is serving me in playing that role and what isn't?
Yes. And that, in a nutshell, inside of a bigger nutshell, is why relationships are so damn important. I'm going to say that again. There's 1,000 nutshells within each other, and it all breaks down into why relationships are so important. It helps you find your destiny. It helps you grow and evolve. It helps you connect with the divine source, whatever name you want to put on it. It helps you, I don't know, make it in life. I know now for certain that like my success as an individual is my success in relationship with others. And not because I'm a weakling who depends on other people. It's that because not only do I get power from other people, it's that I also empower others.
Yeah.
It's a give and a take. It's such a flow of energy that you could almost say the reason why relationships are so important is because all we do is exchange energy back and forth with each other. And that's what relationships are. So if you want to flow,
that's right.
You got to get in relationship.
That's so good. I would like to share one kind of story about my parts in relationships.
Excellent.
It wasn't actually until this year, I might have already mentioned on a previous podcast, where I realized how important relationships are, because here's the thing, like it's the blessing and the curse of being a very competent human being. Like my parts are very competent. Like my parts can get my own needs met. They just can. Except when they can't.
Or they don't know what your needs really are.
Yeah. Like it wasn't until like I found myself in a pretty like dark place, and it was hard for me. I was just like so in it, so in my own confusion, all of that kind of stuff. And is especially in my business, like money was running out, all that shit. And then I started prioritizing relationships and reaching out to people, not necessarily for any agenda other than like, this feels right. And that's when I started making business. It was from my immediate relationships where I got connected to my next client. It was because of the referrals that I had. It was because of the networks that I had built that my business stayed afloat, not because of my own individual competency.
Right. That's another good reason why relationships are critical, because that's all business is. Business is just relationships.
Yeah. And when they say it's not personal, it's business, I'm like, no. Like business is always personal. Business at the end of the day is relationships.
Yeah. Your intentions in business is not always personal, but it is always a personal thing. Yeah. I.e., I may not mean to be screwing you over, but I'm going to screw you over because that's how I get an advantage.
Yeah.
So anyways, not to get like totally derailed, relationships, good. And everyone, that's why we do this podcast, is because, as you can tell from listening to us ramble for the past like hour or so, they're also very complex. And complexity makes things difficult.
Yeah, but they also don't have to be any more complex than like loving the part of you that's here.
Yeah.
And listening to your yeses and nos and following your yeses and nos and learning how to communicate what's a yes for you and what's a no for you. Identifying your needs and learning how to communicate with the people in your life in a way that actually invites those needs to be met.
Yeah.
In harmony with their needs.
Yeah.
I mean, like you can make relationships as simple as you want.
Yeah, you can really make it. And honestly, the longer the relationship grows and goes, the simpler the better.
Yeah, truly.
And yeah, I think that's probably about enough.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think this relationship we're having right now between us and the audience is satisfactory.
We've reached our climax.
Yeah.
Maybe a few climaxes.
It's time to cuddle.
Yeah, it's time to cuddle.
All right, everybody. So relationships good. keep listening to this podcast if you want to learn more, because we're going to talk about all the crazy stuff with relationships, how to keep it simple, how to bust out of that complexity, how to be all this kind of good stuff, how to be yourself.
Yeah. If there's anything specific that you want us to talk about or you want to learn more about, or even if you want some advice on, join Patreon. It's $5 a month. And then fill out your requests in the listener requests box on Patreon, and we will have a whole episode on it.
Yeah, we are super stoked to do that. So otherwise, you just get to hear what we think is important.
Yeah. And I mean, I can talk about that all day, but
trust me, we're not going to stop.
Yeah.
We want to make this the most efficient for you, and getting your feedback that's how we start this relationship between each other.
Yeah.
Come on, folks.
Relationship, folks.
Yeah. All right, Jordin James. Awesome podcast.
Awesome podcast. Great topic.
Great topic. Okay. Well, everybody, be good to each other, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for enjoying this episode of the Heart is a Muscle podcast. We really enjoy creating this content for you, and we want to share some more resources so you can get even more content. So take it away, Jordin.
That's right. If you want to follow either one of us on socials, if you want to work with either one of us, if you want access to our YouTube channel, if you want to buy our book, links to all that stuff is on our Patreon. So that is patreon.com/theheartisamuscle. Now, you don't have to join Patreon to get access to those links.
But you probably should. The more that you support us and support this channel, the more that we can create this awesome content to help support you, because that's really why we do this. We want to make your guys' lives better, and your support really matters.
Yeah. And what you'll get when you join Patreon is a shout out in our next episode. And you will also get access to listener requests, where you will get to request what you want us to talk about in future episodes.
So from the Heart is a Muscle podcast to you guys, thank you so much for all the support, all the feedback. We really, really enjoy it. And we'll talk to you all later.
Truly love you guys so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.